Hello, LNG community. Hope you guys are staying safe. I am Rakhi Oli. I believe most of you know me. Those who don't, I will be sharing a little bio about myself. I'm an oil and gas professional with around 17 years of work experience. I have extensive and diverse experience in execution of mega LNG projects spanning from conceptual design to EPC of several first wave as well as second wave US LNG projects. Lately, I've been spending a lot of time in sharpening my saw to learn about the commercial aspects of LNG value chain. One of the topics that attracts my attention is LNG pricing. And I see at times people are confused with the several pricing options that exist in the global market. So, as I take a deeper dive into this topic, I thought it might be a good idea to come up with a pack of slides for you all so that we can learn together. So, here I am with my first presentation on LNG pricing. In the coming 4 or 5 slides, I'll be talking about the LNG pricing, based on which the LNG offtake agreements are executed worldwide. I will not be discussing the implications of different pricing options into the LNG offtake agreements. So I hope you enjoy the presentation. And if you have any follow-up questions for me, I would be more than happy to hear back from you. And you can collaborate with me at insightlngwithrakhi@gmail.com. You can also follow my page, Insight LNG. So let's get started. So let's talk about what is LNG pricing. We all know that crude oil has a harmonized global price. But as opposed to the crude oil, the LNG does not feature a harmonized global price. Price of liquefied natural gas usually reflects the energy market into which it is sold. And that has the implications on the offtake agreements as well. So the LNG sold under long-term LNG sale contracts traditionally reflects the energy economics of the market into which the LNG is being sold. Of course, the LNG pricing is affected by the supply-demand dynamics, but the pricing is different for different energy markets. Now, the three main LNG markets are Asia, Europe, and US. So let's see how in these three different LNG markets the LNG is priced. Now, let's discuss about the different forms of LNG pricing. There are three different forms of LNG pricing: JKM, TTF, and HH. JKM is the LNG pricing options which is available for the Asian markets, Japan, Korea, and China. And so any LNG which is sold in the Asian market is linked to the JKM pricing option. The JKM pricing option is linked to Japan Custom Cleared Crude Price Index, informally also known as the Japanese Crude Cocktail Price, or sometimes it may be indexed to the Brent Crude Pricing Index. We'll take a deeper dive into this in the next slide. Over here, I'm just giving you an overview. The second pricing option is the TTF. So the European region uses the TTF pricing option. In Europe, the prices are linked to competing gas prices at the gas hubs. And what are the different well-known gas hubs? They are the Dutch Tidal Transfer Facility, TTF, or the UK's National Balancing Point, NBP. So any LNG which is sold in European region will be mostly priced to the TTF or NBP pricing index. The third one is HH, which is the Henry Hub pricing index. And the North American market is basically linked to the Henry Hub pricing index. So now let's take a deeper dive into each pricing option, and we'll start with the pricing options which are linked to oil. So as I said previously, The oil indexed pricing options, we have two oil indexed pricing options, the Brent pricing option and the JKM pricing option. We all know that historically, if we see the LNG pricing has always been tied to the crude oil because crude oil is a replacement fuel to the natural gas. So if for the Asian markets, specifically the pricing into Japan and Asian market will be based on the percentage of the price of the Japan custom cleared crude JCC, which is the average price of custom cleared crude oil imports into Japan as reported in the custom statistics. So based on this, if we have to calculate the price of LNG, then the price of LNG will be JCC, which is the Japan custom cleared crude price, into the price slope. So if we have a price slope, say, for example, of 13% against the Brent or JCC crude, then the corresponding price for the LNG would be 9.10 per MMBTU. And how it is calculated? So here what we are doing is we are multiplying the price of the Brent slash JCC crude prices, which is 70 USD per barrel, with the slope. The slope here is 0.13, 13%, and that gives us the corresponding the price per MMBTU of LNG. So like in the Japanese or the Asian markets, in Europe, the Brent has been favored in oil-linked LNG pricing formulas. So instead of JCC, it will be the Brent pricing option multiplied by the slope. So I believe this clarifies the oil index pricing option to you guys. So next we'll discuss the Henry Hub pricing option. And as I shared previously in my previous slide, that the Henry Hub pricing option is applicable to the North American markets. So before we take a deeper dive, I would just like to share a bit of history that I read in one of the white papers. Historically, natural gas prices were fixed by the government, by the US government. But in 1992, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is FERC, issued its Order 636. Upon the issuance of this Order 636, eventually prices were decontrolled, and that led to the evolution of price indexing against the gas hubs. So we all know that, like Europe, USA also had a well-established gas market since beginning, and hence all the LNG imports were linked to gas prices, most notably to the Henry Hub or the secondary hubs. And of course, after the shale gas evolution, when US started exporting LNG, then most of the LNG exports were also indexed to the Henry Hub prices. The price of LNG based on Henry Hub pricing option, for example, would be 115% of Henry Hub price plus a fixed liquefaction fees to give us a price per MMBTU of LNG. Of course, I'm not including here the transportation cost, which is required to transport the LNG from one place to another. So it doesn't include that. A little bit more insight into Henry Hub, that from where does it gets this pricing option gets its name. So Henry Hub is basically a meeting point in Louisiana for a large number of gas gatherings and transmission pipelines. That serves as the official delivery location for future contracts on the New York Mercantile Exchange, NYMEX. And that's the reason it's the pricing option is called Henry Hub pricing option. So it's like it's a physical place, you know. This hub is the Henry Hub is owned by Sabine Pipeline LLC, and it has access to many major gas markets in the United States. So something interesting that we learned about Henry Hub today. So the last pricing option that we'll discuss today is the TTN pricing option. As I previously mentioned in my first slide, that the TTN pricing option is applicable to the European markets. As we all know that in Europe, the gas markets were already established and developed, and they were established to an extent that the LNG can directly compete with the pipeline gas. So since beginning, it has been indexed to the pipeline gas and not to the crude, unlike Asian markets. As a result, the oil-linked the pricing formula in LNG sales contract have been replaced by pricing formula that are set by reference to competing gas prices at the gas hubs. And we already know, as I mentioned in my previous slide, that the two well-known gas hubs in Europe are the Dutch Title Transfer Facility (TTF) and the UK's National Balancing Point (NBP). Point to be noted here is that unlike Henry Hub, which is a physical place, physical location within the USA, TTF is not. So that's all about the TTN pricing option. Now let's move on to the next slide. So here I'll be presenting my perspective on the changing pricing option, and when I present my perspective on this, I would definitely like to touch upon the briefly on the shale gas evolution as well. We all know that the shale gas evolution has strengthened the position of United States in the global marketplace. The United States currently is the third largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, and it will surpass Australia and Qatar to become the world's largest exporter of LNG within coming 5 years. We all are aware that there are several first wave US LNG projects which are already exporting LNG worldwide, and there are several emerging second wave US LNG projects which have firm plans in place to take FID in coming years and start exporting to the global marketplace by 2025. So that being said, there is a huge competition between LNG export projects, and this huge competition has definitely forced a change in US export pricing model as well. So the second wave US LNG projects and LNG developers definitely need to have that flexibility to adhere themselves to the changes in the US export pricing model.
To cite some examples, Tellurian, which is one of the second wave US LNG Gulf Coast developer, has decided to sell LNG to Total from Driftwood LNG project in Louisiana at prices that will be indexed to JMK. Then, similarly, there are some other U.S. Gulf Coast LNG developers which have executed their offtake agreements and they are indexed to Brent crude pricing. So I believe that although the JMK linked pricing option and the Brent crude linked pricing option will continue to grow. However, in coming years, LNG contracts will increasingly move away from being linked to crude oil and more towards the gas-on-gas pricing at the gas hubs around the world. But as I said, this is just my perspective based on the market research I have done so far. Of course, in support of my perspective, I would like to present a possibility. As I said, there is a lot of competition in the global gas markets, which may lead to reduced and competitive gas prices, while the crude oil prices may stay the same or may increase. So, to deal with the scenario, an LNG pricing mechanism linked to the crude oil prices would not be the most optimized way to go. So I feel price adjustment mechanics such as this is unlikely to be able to suitably accommodate a significant and long-term change in market circumstances. So that's my take on the changing pricing option. But I would definitely like to hear your opinion on it.
So, friends, time to wrap up my presentation. I believe you were able to get enough insights into LNG pricing options that are available worldwide and based on which the LNG offtake agreements are executed in the global gas market. So, I'll leave you with a few teasers for your brain. And the two questions I have for you are: is LNG pricing linked to crude oil an outdated model? And secondly, whether Asian markets will completely adapt to the new pricing model? So with this, I'll wrap up my presentation. And as I said previously, if you have any follow-up questions for me, do collaborate with me at insightlng@gmail.com and follow my page for more interesting upcoming presentations. My page is Insight LNG with Rakhi. Bye.